This here is the main gear of the 2017 Shimano Sahara. How can you tell the old models from the new models? Look for the handle. If you see the ugliest handle in the world, yep, that's the old models. Look at this black disc. Even if you don't know anything about fishing, you can tell that the black disc is made of something different than the core part. The core part is made of zinc alloy, which as a rule of thumb is used to make the gears of all reels under $100. The black disc, however, is made of machine-cut aluminum instead of cast zinc alloy, and then it has some surface coating or treatment that improves the feel of contact between the black disc and the pinion gear. This little gear though in the 2017 model is still made of cast zinc alloy, and that's usually considered okay because it's the black disc that's fighting the fish. The little disc is just doing the spool oscillation up and down, but whether you fight a fish or not, the pressure on the little teeth is all the same. Now let's look at the gear in the 2022 model. Look how the whole thing is black. You don't have a core that is made of cast zinc alloy and then a black disc that is glued to it. It's not exactly glued, but you know what I mean. And also notice that as a result of this, the little teeth, the little gear is now also made of machine-cut aluminum. I don't think the extra durability in the small Locomotive gear is critical here, but this black surface treatment will improve the feeling of smoothness because this black surface treatment will now be in between this gear and the other zinc Locomotive gear in the reel. This main gear, my friends, is of the same quality that is used in the Ultegra, which is another fantastic reel, and actually in the entire Vanford family that costs between $200 and $300. And now this absolutely phenomenal main gear made it all the way down to the Sahara. The rest of the reel actually has very few changes. You can see the old model on the left and the new model on the right. And you can see that the shape of the frame was slightly redesigned, perhaps to save a few grams of weight. The last gear in the new Sahara that is still made of cast zinc alloy is the main Locomotive gear, but I promise you that that gear can never wear out. First of all, like I already said, there is no pressure on this gear to begin with. And second of all, if you look at the size, this gear is absolutely huge compared to the small Locomotive gear that is attached to the main gear. So because of the gear ratios, it will take 5 revolutions of the small Locomotive gear to get just 1 revolution of this big Locomotive gear here. That's why I don't think it's practically possible to wear out this gear. My only recommendation and kind of a wish for this main Locomotive gear is to make it ride on a bushing instead of the way it is right now. It's riding directly on a post of the frame. I understand that there is no pressure here and it doesn't matter, but that's not right. I don't want any gear riding directly on a frame. Put a plastic bushing under the gear, it's not gonna cost you anything, and then put the gear on top of the plastic bushing. That's the right way to do it. The Legalis has a bearing here. Let's be honest, that's the one difference between the Sahara reels and all of the reels from the Legalis family. They have a bearing here. I'm not asking for bearing, but put a plastic bushing so whoever wants to replace the bushing can put a bearing there. By the way, look at what Shimano put on top of the little nipple on top of the Locomotive gear. This little nipple serves as a coupler between this part and this part over here that has like a bed in S shape, and the little rubber O-ring that they put prevents the metal to metal contact inside the little bed there. Believe it or not, this little rubber O-ring goes a long way towards making the reel feel more expensive, because you don't have the little clunking that you get every time the nipple reaches the end of the little bed there. The little O-ring kills all the metal to metal contact, and all you end up with is beautiful, smooth, subdued feeling. And yes, if you're wondering, the Legalis does have the little rubber O-ring there too. It has had it since 2017, but the old Sahara didn't have it, and it's nevertheless good to see that this little O-ring made it in the new Sahara in 2022, but it did make it. Another improvement, at least in my opinion, is the little screws that go in the frame are now painted black. I'm sure very few people care about this, but I care because now the screws don't stick out when you look at the reel. And I care about it. This is my channel, so here you go. The little screws made it in the video. Now let's look at the handle of the old Sahara. This handle has been, in my opinion, one of the ugliest, most obnoxious looking handles on the market since 2017. The only reels that I have seen that have even uglier handles are the Abu Garcia reels, which to me look like screwed up pieces of Lego constructor. But the Shimano Sahara is definitely in top 3 ugliest handles for the last 5, 6, 7 years. It had a hex shaft, of course, but I don't have any problem with hex shaft, and they definitely at least used to be the norm for reels under $100, at least 5, 6, 7 years ago. But the biggest problem with the handle was the knob that was made of hard plastic first, and then it was permanently attached, so you couldn't clean it, you couldn't shim it if you have free play, and it did have free play. You can't put bearings if you want to, and it was just a bad handle all around. Now let's look at the absolutely gorgeous handle of the new Sahara. First of all, there is no more hex shaft. It's screwed directly in the main gear like all newer reels. It's not a big deal, but I have to admit it is nicer than having a hex shaft. Second, look at the beautiful black anodized aluminum arm and compare this with the nasty gold tin looking arm of the old reel. Number 3, the knob. Now we have a thin rubberized soft touch knob. This is the best knob in the world. Okay, Daiwa's knobs are just as good, but these are the best knobs in the world. This knob here, I give you my word, is better than the knob on the brand new Stella. And it is definitely better than the thick, chunky, obnoxious plastic on the old Sahara reel. Number 4, you can open it and service it. You can open it, clean it, then oil it. You can shim it if you have free play. Those of you who love the bearings, it has 2 standard size plastic bushings inside, so it accepts the same size bearings that you put in all of the other reels. So you can do whatever you want with this knob. I have to say here that both of my plastic bushings were shimmed. Who shims plastic bushings on reels under $100? Shimano really surprised me with their attention to detail in this reel. Also, the screw that was holding the knob had a good amount of thread lock on it. Again, that's a nice touch. That's a good attention to detail. Remember they painted the screws on the frame from white to black so they don't stick out? Again, quite a few things I'm noticing in this reel that are just good attention to detail in a reel under $100. There is still no bearing under the line roller, but you can't have everything in a reel under $100. I do want to see a bearing here, especially for freshwater applications, but what are you gonna do? The metal bushing, you can find a bearing with that diameter, but I can tell you it's not gonna be easy to replace because of the special shape of this metal bushing, and you're gonna need a whole bunch of special washers around the bearing. You can find a bearing with the diameter of the metal bushing. The problem is you're gonna need a lot of washers around it to close it properly. Otherwise, if you just put a normal bearing there, it's not gonna close properly and water will enter the bearing right away and it's gonna seize up pretty fast. Even in fresh water, if you don't close it properly over there, it will rust on you. And the last improvement of the new Sahara compared to the old one is the weight. All of the new models are a few grams lighter than the older models. The weight reduction is actually extremely important because the old Sahara, the ugly dog that it was, would have been a total competitor to the old Legalis in terms of smoothness, in terms of feel, even in terms of resistance. But the only problem was that it was heavy as a brick. And even for cheap rods under $100, it was just too damn heavy. Unfortunately, the weight reduction fell a little short because my Sahara, which is 2000 size and a low gear ratio, is still 213 grams. If you get the high gear ratio model, expect a few grams more on top of that. And my old 2017 Daiwa Legalis, also 2000 size, spooled all the way up, weighs only 197 grams. So the brand new Sahara in size 2000 will still be some 15 grams heavier than the 2017 Legalis of the same size. Now I'm here to tell you that 15 grams of weight difference in an ultralight reel is enough to notice even if you fish with rods under $100. I put both of these reels on the 7'6" Daiwa Presso and yeah, I can tell the difference. And finally, let's answer the question. Is the new Daiwa Sahara overall better than the Daiwa Legalis LT? Let me remind you again that the Daiwa Legalis has been the king of the ultralight hill ever since it first appeared in 2017. The only reels better than this old Legalis are expensive Daiwas and expensive Shimanos. All of the other brands, Flugers and Schmugers and Abus and Quantums, they have nothing that feels like a Legalis at any price. At $200, $300 price points, they still have nothing that feels like a little Legalis. Well, this Sahara that you see on the table right now does feel better than my best Legalis. It's a very subtle difference. Perhaps the Sahara has just a little bit less free play, just a little bit better tolerances. And maybe I'm imagining it because I saw the black coating on the gears, but I do feel that the contact between the gears is just a little bit more pleasant. But if you told me that you don't feel that, I wouldn't argue with you because without a doubt, both reels just feel phenomenally smooth, phenomenally quiet, and have just unbelievably low resistance for such a cheap reel. Now this is just talking about how the reels feel. Both of them feel amazing, but Sahara perhaps feels a little bit nicer. But if we evaluate them from just purely objectively engineering point of view, then the Sahara is definitely a better reel from engineering point of view. The obvious reason is the superior gears in the Sahara. Shimano put their machine-cut aluminum gears that they use in $200 reels. Daiwa is using cast zinc alloy in their reels under $100, even up to $150. Only over $200 in Daiwa you're gonna get their machine-cut aluminum gears. And even though the gears of this Daiwa and this Shimano feel very similar out of the box, and not just out of the box, but if we're talking about the 1000 and 2000 sizes and ultralight fishing, they're gonna feel very similar even 1 and 2 years down the road, because how much pressure do you put in ultralight fishing? But nevertheless, if we objectively compare the gears from just engineering perspective, the gears in the Sahara are obviously superior. They will have better tolerances due to the manufacturing method, and they're going to be more durable in the long run. I don't know how long this run has to be, but if it's long enough, they will be more durable. Another advantage of the Sahara over the Legalis is the stronger frame. Yes, it is heavier, that makes the reel heavier, but let's face it, it is more rigid and stronger. As a matter of fact, because the gears are also stronger, if I was picking between the two reels in size 2500 for bass fishing, 10 out of 10 times I would pick the Sahara. I mean, it's just a no-brainer. The only debate that can happen between, which of the two reels is better is for ultralight fishing. But as far as bass fishing and even higher, stress levels, the Sahara will win every time. If we switch to cosmetics real quick, Shimano did everything right. I'm picky about, ugly stuff, but I don't know what to complain about in this particular reel. Black and gold is a proven combination. Pretty much Shimano made the reel look like the first generation Legalis, but in my opinion, even prettier. I mean, this is just a gorgeous reel. It looks really close to the Sustain, maybe even more beautiful than the Sustain. I mean, you can put this reel on just about any rod and it's gonna look gorgeous. And all of the new generations of the Legalis family, the colors are now blue and silver and whatnot, and I think it's very easy call to make that the new Sahara is now better looking than any reel in the Legalis family. And finally, let's not forget about the new handle in the Sahara, which in my opinion is better than any handle in the Daiwa Legalis family. You have to go all the way up to the Fuego to get a handle that you can service yourself, but then the lever is kind of too long and too big, and I just prefer the handle of the Sahara better than any handle in the Legalis family. And after everything we just listed, let's ask the question one more time. Is the new Sahara better than the Legalis family of reels? You're gonna hate the answer, but unfortunately it is not clear and it will depend on your preferences. At the end of the day, the Legalis feels pretty much the same and is significantly lighter. And on top of that, some of the models of the Legalis family are significantly cheaper. You can buy 2 Regal LT reels for the price of 1 Shimano Sahara. So for everybody who is sensitive to weight, I think it will still make sense to buy one of the cheaper reels in the Legalis family. But I will end this video with this. If the extra 15 grams of weight don't bother you, I recommend pay the extra money and buy the Sahara. You are going to absolutely love it.